For many years, Vladimir Putin has been obsessed with ending the dominance of the United States in military and economic matters around the world. For many years, Putin has openly discussed his desire to end the unipolar world dominated by the United States geopolitically and create a multipolar world in which Russia is once again a great power. In order to accomplish this, Putin is focused on two main goals. The first is to create divisions in the American system of alliances around the world between America and its NATO partners, between America and various of its allies in the Middle East. And generally in geopolitics, what Russia has tried to do has been to try to drive a wedge between America and its various partners. Now, the second aspect of Putin's strategy has been to diminish the importance of the dollar as the preferred international currency. Putin believes that it's essential in order to diminish American power for the power that the dollar has in the global economy to be diminished. Now, we know that these have been Russia's strategic objectives for many years. However, Putin has lacked both the means and the opportunity to bring this about. But right now, Putin has the best opportunity that he has ever had to try to bring about these strategic goals. And this is going to be playing out, I believe, in the next few months, and it's going to have major effects on the international stage geopolitically, and it's also going to have major effects on global financial markets. In the first part of this video, I'm going to be explaining what it is that I think Vladimir Putin is going to be doing in the next few months. In the second part of this video, I'm going to be focusing more in detail on Putin's motivations for doing what I think he's going to be doing in the next few months. It's really the second part of this video, which is really the most important. But I want to start out by explaining exactly what I think he is going to be doing. Putin's primary objective in the next few months is to facilitate or propitiate a major spike in global oil prices. A major spike in global oil prices would cause a spike in inflation in Western nations, and it would trigger a recession, and would also trigger a crash in global financial markets. In the second part of this video, I'm going to be explaining exactly why Putin wants to do this. But right now, I just want to focus on how he will go about doing this. So Putin has a number of levers that he can try to pull to try to create this spike in global oil prices. The most direct lever he has is actually to constrain supplies of Russian oil coming out on the global markets. Russia is pretty much tied for the top global exporter of oil in the world. It's one of the top three producers of oil in the world. Putin could find various ways to limit the flow of Russian oil into global oil markets, which at a time of very low inventories, which is something I've discussed in my previous videos, could cause a major spike in oil prices. If Putin simply reduced the flow of Russian oil by 2 or 3 or even 4 million barrels a day, which he could easily do, either just straight out doing it, announcing that he would do it in retaliation, for example, against Western support of Ukraine, or he might just do it through some sort of a false flag attack on Russian export facilities. He has a number of ways that he could manufacture a disruption of Russian oil flows into the global market. And he might actually do that. And that's the first way that he might do it. But I actually think that that's probably not what's going to happen. I think that he's right now really focusing his energies on a second means of propitiating a major spike in global oil prices. And that is through his support, both technological and military, of various groups in the Middle East that could trigger a major war in the Middle East that in turn would cause a major disruption of oil supplies. So who are these groups that could trigger a major war in the Middle East? I'm going to start off by talking about Iran's proxies in the Middle East before I actually speak about Iran itself. Now, Iran has various proxies in the Middle East: the Houthis, Hezbollah, various groups in Syria and Iraq. And in this particular regard, None of these groups up until this point have been able to strike Israeli targets deep in Israeli territory with any sort of accuracy or potency. They lack the long distance types of missiles and the type of technology that allows them to deliver these missiles with precision. Now, that situation is rapidly changing because Vladimir Putin has been delivering through various channels sophisticated weaponry to the Houthis of Yemen. He has been delivering through Iran sophisticated military technology to Hezbollah. In fact, there's reports that just very recently, Russia has rushed in a series of armaments to arm Hezbollah in anticipation of a conflict with Israel. And so here's the thing that Vladimir Putin understands very well. It will only take one well-guided missile that's able to strike a target in Israel, whether it be a civilian target or an important piece of infrastructure, any kind of significant strike that, say, the Houthis or that Hezbollah managed to get in could very quickly trigger an all-out regional war between Israel and Iran's proxies, which would almost certainly eventually draw Iran into the picture. Now, one of the things that we have to understand is that Israel has said that if Iran's proxies hit it with weaponry acquired from Iran, that it will hold Iran directly responsible. Most of this flow of weaponry that Russia is making available in the region, this proliferation of arms in the region, is flowing through Iran. So Putin is mainly making these arms available to Iran. He's actually made some arms available directly to the Houthis. And so that is Putin's way of triggering a major war in the Middle East, simply by supplying the type of sophisticated weaponry that has long enough range and that has long enough accuracy to hit Israel. As soon as that happens, Israel will respond with massive attacks, and this will in turn trigger a regional war. Now, another really big part of Putin's strategy, it's really the biggest part of Putin's strategy, has been to form a military alliance and a very close political alliance with Iran. Now, Putin has supplied Iran with very sophisticated military equipment of all sorts, but in particular, long-range precision-guided missiles. And it's also provided with the technology that Iran has used to become a major manufacturer of precision-guided missiles. Iran today possesses thousands of ballistic missiles that can deliver warheads with precision on Israel. In addition, Russia has provided Iran with technology that would enable it to actually hit U.S. military assets in the region, hit the U.S. Navy, potentially even sinking a U.S. naval aircraft carrier, but certainly with the potential to neutralize U.S. naval power in the region. And this is really a dream of Vladimir Putin's, to get the U.S. Navy out of the Persian Gulf and to diminish U.S. power in the Persian Gulf. And it's done so by supplying Iran with a great deal of technology that really threatens American forces in the region. But in addition, as I said, it threatens America's main ally in the region, which is Israel. And this is really where we're coming to the real crux of the issue right now. Vladimir Putin has been working for many, many years on a strategic plan to diminish American power in the Middle East and in the Persian Gulf specifically. But right now is really the time when it seems that Vladimir Putin is going to cash in his chips. This is the moment where he's looking for a payoff on his investment. And that's what we're going to discuss in the second part of this video. Why is Vladimir Putin seeking to create a war in the Middle East at this particular time? I'm going to be going over a series of reasons why Vladimir Putin is going to try to provoke a major war in the Middle East at this particular point in time. And I'm going to divide these reasons into two main categories. The first category are immediate reasons. These are reasons that are very, very immediate, having to do with very recent events. And they're the types of things that require Putin to act now rather than later. Then I'm going to go through a series of longer term strategic reasons why Putin wants to go about doing this. Now, the first reason, that is an immediate reason, has to do with the fact that Vladimir Putin is literally desperate to end the war with Ukraine. Vladimir Putin needs to find a way to end this war with Ukraine because his entire legacy as a leader is being tarnished and is being harmed by this war. Russia's economy is being devastated. They're losing a generation of youth that are being killed in Ukraine, maimed in Ukraine, and also youth that are leaving Russia. This is something that's almost existentially important for Russia. And Vladimir Putin has decided that, and it's actually true, that it's going to be very difficult for him to end the war with Ukraine on his terms as long as NATO, led by the United States, is supplying massive amounts of sophisticated armament and training to Ukrainian forces. Therefore, Vladimir Putin has to stop the flow of armaments and training and support to Ukraine. The only way that he can realistically do this is if the current administration that is represented by Kamala Harris is voted out of office and Donald Trump is voted into office. Donald Trump has mentioned on many occasions that he will very quickly bring an end to this war one way or another when he comes into office. And Vladimir Putin is confident that Donald Trump is going to cut off or threaten to cut off the supply of armaments to Ukraine, will threaten to even break up the NATO alliance unless there is an end to the fighting in Ukraine. And Putin believes that the peace that will be signed under Trump's initiatives will be relatively favorable for Russia, but most importantly, that it'll happen relatively quickly after Trump is elected. So what does this have to do with Putin? Because Putin, by causing a massive spike in global oil prices and bringing about an economic crisis that is global in nature, that's going to create chaos. Warfare in the Middle East will create chaos. Very unlikely that the incumbent administration that is being represented by Kamala Harris will be able to win an election in that type of an environment. Very likely that in an environment of rising inflation, rising oil prices, global strife and warfare, that's the type of environment in which Kamala Harris is likely to lose. Donald Trump is likely to win. And for Putin, it's pretty much existentially important that Trump wins because Trump administration gives him the best chance of getting out of the war with Ukraine on terms that are actually favorable to Russia. Now, the second immediate reason that is motivating Putin is the fact that he is just recently been humiliated by the fact that Ukrainian forces have crossed the border into Russia and captured a pretty large chunk of territory right across the border in the Kursk region of Russia. Now, this is a major blow to Russia, to Putin's internal prestige within Russia, and he is absolutely furious. And Putin wants revenge. Probably the best way that Putin can get revenge on the United States, because he holds the United States accountable for this. He believes that it's U.S. weaponry, U.S. training, U.S. intelligence that has enabled this incursion of Ukrainian forces into Russia. And so Putin wants to get back at the United States, and he wants to get back at them quickly. And the most clear way that he can do this right now is by supplying armaments to Iran and its proxies, and through various channels, get them to strike at American forces, particularly American naval forces in the Persian Gulf, but also American ground forces, wherever they might be in the region, and strike at the U.S.'s main ally, which is Israel, and cause a major war in the Middle East that would cause a major spike in oil prices, that would cause a recession in the United States and in the West, and cause a major collapse of global financial markets. This is the way that Putin believes that he can get back at the West for this humiliation that they've caused him as a result of Ukraine invading Russian territory. I've just gone over the two most immediate reasons for Putin wanting to strike now, but I think it's important to review the longer term strategic motivations behind Putin's desire to get back at the United States and to engage in actions that will tend to diminish America's economic and military power. The first major strategic consideration from Putin's point of view is that he wants to diminish America's geopolitical power in the world. He believes that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, which he considers, and he has said, is the most tragic event in the history of the world, that the Soviet Union collapsed, leaving America to be the sole global superpower. He wants to end that situation and make the world more of a multipolar world, get rid of the unipolar world. And the way that Putin can do this is by creating regional powers in different parts of the world that are able to essentially neutralize American power, confront American power, break up alliances that the United States has created in those regions. And the perfect example of this is precisely with Iran. Iran has built up enough military power with the help of Russia that it's able to neutralize largely American naval power, even ground forces in the Middle East, and is able to actually strike a blow at the United States' main ally in the Middle East, which is Israel. It's also able to create problems in the alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia. So what Putin has done with Iran is a perfect example of the execution of a long-term plan. But right now it is a time when he really wants to cash in the chips in the development of this plan, which is more than a decade in the making. A second major objective that Putin has wanted to achieve is to break up the NATO alliance, is to sow division and to sow strife and to create wedges between the United States and its various European allies and Turkey, because you have to understand that Turkey is one of the major components of NATO. Now, this is a perfect opportunity for Putin to try to pull Turkey out of the naval alliance and create a wedge between Turkey and the rest of the West, because Turkey right now is led by an Islamist president that has a great sympathy towards the Palestinians. And he has been openly declaring his support for the Palestinians. He has even talked about potentially invading Israel. And so the breakout of a major war in the Middle East between Israel and various powers in the Middle East could be the death blow of relations between Turkey and the rest of the Western NATO powers. This could also create all kinds of divisions between Western nations that are part of NATO, because not most of the nations that comprise NATO don't actually agree on how to deal with this situation in the Middle East. There's a lot of countries in Europe that are quite favorable towards the Palestinians and want the creation of a Palestinian state. And then there's other nations within NATO that believe that that's the wrong approach. And that's certainly been the case with the United States. So this is creating and sowing all kinds of divisions in the West, in the NATO alliance. And Putin understands that by causing an actual war in the Middle East, it's going to cause these divisions that are already there to really blow up and be brought out into the open, causing major divisions in these alliances that the U.S. has built up over the course of many decades. Now, a third major long-term strategic consideration for Putin, something that he's been talking about for many years, something that he's really obsessed about, really, is that he wants to end the dominance of the U.S. dollar in the global economy. Putin believes that by the U.S. dollar being the global reserve currency, that this gives the United States unfair economic, political, and military power in the world. Putin believes that if he can end the dollar's role as the global reserve currency, that America's power as a superpower in the world will practically collapse. And Putin has been obsessing about this for many, many years. 20 years at least where he's openly discussed this in public in many, many forums. And one of the keys that Putin believes to destroying the power of the US dollar would be a major rise in commodity prices, such as oil and other commodities that are supplied by various nations around the world. Putin believes that if there's global inflation and if the value of the dollar actually declines with relation to these various commodities, that it will weaken the faith in the US dollar. It would also weaken the faith that various nations around the world have in US treasury securities, US government securities that nations around the world invest in. They invest their proceeds from US exports to the United States in US treasury securities. And he believes that by breaking that confidence in US treasury securities, that would end US sort of dollar domination. And so by propitiating a major spike in global oil prices, major inflation at a time when the US is particularly vulnerable right now from a fiscal point of view, because we have to understand that the United States is running some really very bad fiscal deficits right now and has a very high level of debt and is also paying very high interest costs on its debt. Right now is a very vulnerable moment to hit the United States with an oil shock. Putin knows that. That's why this strategy that he's been talking about for 20 years, he hasn't done anything about it yet, but this is his moment. If he's ever going to try to hit the dollar, this is the time to do it. And this is exactly one of the reasons why I think he is going to do it. Putin has the motive, he has the means, and he right now has the opportunity to really hurt the United States, both geopolitically and economically. And I don't think that he's going to let this opportunity pass. And in particular, because he has two very immediate motivations, which is, as I said, it's critical for him to end this war in Ukraine, and causing global chaos and causing a spike in global oil prices gives him the best chance of getting Donald Trump elected. Getting Donald Trump elected, in Putin's estimation, will enable him to get out of the conflict in Ukraine on his own terms. But the other thing that's really driving Vladimir Putin right now is that he's furious and he wants revenge on the United States and on the West for the humiliation that they've caused him as a result of Ukraine's invasion of Russia. So I want to leave you with 3 action-oriented points right now. The first is subscribe to this channel. Of all financial analysts, economic analysts that are out there in the world right now, I am probably one of the only ones that's paying very close attention to these issues right now. I'm watching this issue like a hawk, and I'm going to be talking about this regularly on this channel while this crisis is going on. You should also review some of my past videos to give you more context, because I've been talking about this for at least a couple of months now. And there's a lot of background material that you can learn about by watching those other videos. The second action-oriented point is that if you subscribe to my free newsletter, you're going to be getting more frequent updates on precisely these sorts of issues and how they're going to be impacting the global economy and financial markets. And members of my free newsletters can become free members of a community where I can actually discuss these issues in real time during the day in a special forum that I've created for discussion between members. When there's important news or developments through the day, I'll actually update those things in real time and have some live back and forth between myself and members of this free community. And third action point, very important. If you're an investor and you want to figure out ways that you can protect your capital and or actually take advantage of the situation to try to profit from it, because there's going to be some really interesting profit-making opportunities that are going to be emerging from this environment. Some opportunities have already emerged and we've been able to profit from them. Then I encourage you to subscribe to my subscription service on Seeking Alpha, the Seeking Alpha marketplace, called Successful Portfolio Strategy. That's where I have a model portfolio that mimics my real life portfolio of what I'm actually doing in real time. You get real time alerts. You get a portfolio that reports everything that I'm doing in real time. And that will give you ideas on how you can try to protect your capital and potentially really take advantage of this once in a lifetime type situation that appears to be developing right now. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you soon.